Listen closely, because sometimes what unsettles us in life isn't a hidden conspiracy, but the way uncertainty begins to speak louder when we are emotionally alert and trying to make sense of the people around us. It is natural to notice shifts in tone, behavior, or communication in close relationships, especially during periods when you are already reflective or sensitive to change. But not every feeling of distance or confusion points to betrayal or hidden intent. Often it is the mind's way of trying to protect you by searching for patterns, even when full information is not yet visible. What matters most in those moments is not rushing toward assumptions, but grounding yourself in observation, communication, and patience with what you do not yet fully understand. Healthy relationships are built on openness and trust that is confirmed through clarity over time, not fear-driven conclusions formed in moments of uncertainty. If something feels unclear, the strongest response is often a calm conversation, rather than internal narratives that grow heavier the longer they are left unspoken. You do not need to assume the worst to protect yourself. You only need to stay aware enough to ask honest questions and listen carefully to the answers that follow. In that space of awareness, you regain your clarity, and you allow truth, whatever it is, to reveal itself without distortion. And that is where real strength lives, not in suspicion, but in steady understanding and grounded perception of your own reality. When we slow down enough to separate intuition from anxiety, we often discover that what we feared was less about others and more about our own need for certainty. That realization does not weaken you. It helps you see more clearly and respond more wisely. Not every unanswered question needs an immediate conclusion, and not every moment of discomfort is a signal of harm. Sometimes, it is simply life asking you to pause, observe, and choose your response with care instead of urgency. The more you practice that kind of steadiness, the less power uncertainty has over your peace. And in time, you learn that clarity does not come from fear, but from grounded attention to what is real and present. This is how you protect your peace without losing your openness to people or to life itself, while staying grounded in truth and respectful communication with patience and balance over time and reflection. My child, they have been feeding your enemies with the very information those enemies use to hurt you. I know you're wondering, who is this person? Who could break my trust like this? Who could carry two faces, one for me, one for the world? That question is burning in your heart, rising like fire, and I will not leave you in confusion. But before the name rises to the front of your mind, you need to understand how this all began. This betrayal did not start yesterday. It did not begin last month. It started slowly, quietly, like a tiny crack forming at the bottom of a glass. At first, the person didn't intend to do wrong. They didn't plan to step into darkness. Their first mistake came from frustration, from a moment of anger, from a time they felt misunderstood. They opened the wrong door, and for a moment they felt guilty. But when no consequences came, when no one questioned their actions, when it slipped by unnoticed, they tried it again. A second conversation, a second confession, a second moment of weakness disguised as honesty, and then everything spiraled. They began giving away more of your business, more of your thoughts, more of your private battles, not because you deserved betrayal, but because they believed no one would find out. They convinced themselves that you were strong enough to handle anything, so sharing your pain wouldn't matter. But my child, it does matter, because the people they shared it with are not innocent listeners. The two individuals on the other side of their whispers are the very ones who hold envy toward you. They don't want your success. They don't want your peace. They don't want your growth. And now they are gathering information like weapons. The first person your betrayer connected with is someone who has always watched you from a distance. Someone who carries a jealousy they've never admitted. They smile in your presence but grit their teeth when you turn your back. They pretend to celebrate you, but deep down they cannot stand the idea of you rising higher. This is the one your betrayer confided in first. This is the one who now knows things they should never have known. But the second person, the second affair of the spirit, this one is darker. This one is far more dangerous because this second person doesn't just dislike you. They want to manipulate what you love. They want to interfere with your peace. They want to twist situations so they can pretend to be your helper while actually working against you. And your betrayer, unknowingly or willingly, has become a bridge between you and someone who wants to drain your strength. But my child, hear me. This is not being revealed to hurt you. I am not showing you all of this so that you collapse under the weight of disappointment. I am revealing this because if you don't see it today, the damage will multiply. It will grow from 2 to 3, then 3 to 5, and soon you will find yourself surrounded by people who pretend to care but are secretly feeding off your light, and I cannot allow that. Your purpose is too precious. Your future is too important. Your spirit is too valuable for me to let the snakes gather quietly around your feet. I reveal truth not to break you, but to protect you. Right now, there is a name appearing in your thoughts, a face that makes your stomach twist, a person whose recent behavior has not felt right. You have tried to ignore it, but every time something happens, their name becomes louder in your heart. That is not coincidence. That is not imagination. That is not overthinking. That is me whispering to your spirit, guiding your intuition, telling you to look again, because once you see clearly, you will not be fooled again. You have been kind. You have been forgiving. You have been patient with people who do not always deserve your loyalty. Your heart is pure. What hurts most in moments like this is not just what happens, but what it makes you question, your judgment, your trust, your sense of what was real. But even in that uncertainty, something important begins to form: perspective. Over time, what feels overwhelming in the moment starts to settle, and the noise of emotion slowly gives way to clarity. There is a point where you begin to see things differently, not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you are no longer viewing it through the sharp edge of pain. Distance brings understanding, time brings context, and with that, what once felt chaotic begins to organize itself into something more understandable. You start to realize that not everything requires confrontation to be resolved. Not every answer comes from a dramatic moment of exposure. Often, understanding arrives quietly, through reflection, through conversations that eventually happen, and through the simple passage of time that reveals what emotion once obscured. And in that process, something within you changes as well. The weight you were carrying begins to shift, not because everything outside of you has changed, but because your relationship to it has. You are no longer standing in the center of confusion. You are stepping out of it. That change doesn't erase what you felt, but it prevents it from defining you. In the end, clarity is not something that is forced into existence. It unfolds, and when it does, it rarely feels like a dramatic revelation. It feels like quiet understanding, the kind that allows you to breathe again, think again, and move forward without carrying everything you once thought you had to hold. You have pretended to be strong even when you were breaking inside. But a shift is happening. Something divine is moving around you. Something powerful is positioning itself in your favor. And those who betrayed you will soon realize they did not weaken you. They positioned you for elevation. But before elevation comes exposure. Before promotion comes separation. Before blessings come clarity. And so today, clarity begins. My child, now that your heart is steady and your spirit is awake, I will take you deeper. You stood at the doorway of truth in the last part, but now I am guiding you inside the room where every lie, every hidden whisper, every masked intention sits in the open. I need you to listen without fear. Fear clouds the mind. Fear blurs the spirit. You don't need that now. You need clarity, because clarity is what breaks chains. Let me take you back, not far, only a short distance behind you. There was a moment when you felt something shift in the atmosphere around someone close to you. Their tone changed, their responses changed, their presence began to feel heavy, not because you did anything wrong, but because the weight of their secrets began pressing against their own conscience. They didn't know how to hide it anymore, but they kept trying. You saw it, remember? That slight hesitation when you asked a simple question, that sudden defensiveness about something small, that strange distancing that felt unnatural. Your spirit reacted instantly, even before your mind understood what was happening. You felt a tightening in your chest. Something whispered, "Pay attention." That whisper was me, because the person betraying you has been carrying two worlds on their shoulders. One world with you, built on your love, your trust, your loyalty, and another world built on secrecy, fueled by the thrill of getting away with things you would never suspect. This double life did not begin full of malice. At first, they told someone a small detail about you to vent, to release frustration. But the person they vented to, the first connection, fed on that information. They enjoyed hearing it. They encouraged more. It is also common, during periods of emotional strain or fatigue, for people to interpret normal fluctuations in energy, focus, or mood as signs of external influence or hidden causes. In reality, changes in how someone feels mentally or physically often come from a combination of stress, sleep patterns, workload, emotional processing, or simple exhaustion. The mind and body respond dynamically to pressure, and even subtle accumulation of stress can create a sense of heaviness, distraction, or reduced energy without any single identifiable trigger. When these experiences occur, the mind may search for explanations that feel immediate or symbolic, but the most accurate understanding usually comes from looking at broader context rather than isolated moments. It can be helpful to consider recent routines, emotional demands, and overall mental load when trying to understand such shifts, rather than attributing them to external narratives or unseen forces. This approach encourages self-awareness grounded in observable factors, which makes it easier to respond constructively, whether through rest, adjustment of habits, or simply allowing time for recovery. Emotional clarity often returns when pressure is reduced and attention is shifted toward tangible aspects of well-being rather than speculative explanations. Over time, building this kind of reflective habit helps create resilience because it strengthens the ability to distinguish between internal states and external assumptions. It also supports healthier emotional regulation, allowing individuals to respond to challenges with greater calm and understanding. Ultimately, clarity grows when experiences are interpreted through a balanced lens, where both emotional signals and practical realities are considered together, leading to a more stable and grounded sense of perspective. You couldn't explain it, but deep inside you, something felt like it broke without cracking. That was the day your betrayer shared something deeply personal about you with someone they should never have trusted. They handed over a secret that belonged only to you, and the moment those words left their mouth, a shift happened. You felt it, even without knowing what occurred. I allowed you to feel that shift, so you would know something hidden was happening behind your back. Let me take you even deeper. There is a pattern in the behavior of the person who is betraying you. Once you see this pattern clearly, you will never be fooled again. This person behaves differently depending on who they are talking to. Around you, they act warm, calm, loyal. Around the first outside connection, they become expressive, emotional, opinionated. Around the second outside connection, they become quiet, guarded, strategic. These shifts in behavior are not random. They are signs of double living, signs of divided loyalty, signs that someone is playing two sides of a story. Now, pay attention. I am about to show you the identity of the betrayer in a way that will feel natural, not forced. Think back to a moment recently when you shared something personal, something that mattered deeply to you, and the person you trusted seemed distracted. They responded, but their words felt empty. Their eyes did not match their tone. Their reaction felt off, almost rehearsed. They gave you the right phrases, but not the right sincerity. Why? Because they had already shared that thing with someone else. They had already told the wrong person what you told them. They had already used your vulnerability as conversation material. So by the time you spoke, your pain wasn't fresh to them anymore. They had already diluted it by exposing it somewhere else. That is why something felt off. Your heart recognized what your mind could not yet understand. Now breathe. In this moment, a certain name is hovering in your thoughts. I see it forming. You're trying not to jump to conclusions, but the same person keeps showing up in your mind again and again. Every time I mention betrayal, two-faced behavior, strange shifts, your spirit keeps pointing to one particular person. When trust has been stretched over time, it's natural for the mind to try to make sense of inconsistencies. You remember what someone said, then compare it to what they did, and when those things don't fully align, uncertainty begins to grow, not always because something is definitively wrong, but because something feels unresolved. In these moments, it's important to recognize how easily the mind can fill gaps with stories. When we feel emotionally unsettled, we tend to interpret ambiguity as certainty, and suspicion can feel like clarity. But feelings, even strong ones, are not the same as facts. What matters most is not rushing to conclusions, but paying attention to patterns over time, how you are treated consistently, whether communication is honest and respectful, and whether trust is being strengthened or quietly worn down. Those are the things that reveal reality more clearly than any single thought or emotional spike. Sometimes the real work is not identifying a but understanding where your sense of safety has been disrupted and why. That can involve setting boundaries, asking direct questions, or simply giving yourself space to step back and see things more clearly. Trust is not meant to be forced or assumed. It's meant to be earned and maintained. And when it feels uncertain, clarity comes not from suspicion, but from grounded observation, honest conversation, and protecting your own emotional stability, while the truth reveals itself through time and action. Someone has been whispering into their ears, poisoning their understanding, confusing their loyalty. This outside influence is intentional. They want to create distance between you and the one you trust. They want to weaken your bond so they can gain more control. This second person studies your reactions. They watch your life quietly. They comment indirectly. They pretend to be harmless, but their actions have led to misunderstandings, tension, and emotional sharpness in the person who has betrayed you. You wondered why this person suddenly snapped at you one day, why they became cold on another day, why they acted distant without explanation, why their tone felt off even when their words sounded normal. That wasn't them. That was the influence of the second person, speaking through them. But now, my child, the veil is lifting. The truth is rising like the sun. You cannot unsee it anymore. You cannot unknow what your spirit already recognizes, and I will make it clearer still. Let me show you the moment everything begins to expose itself. In the coming days, pay attention to three things. 1. A slip of the tongue. Someone will say something they shouldn't know, something only you and the betrayer knew. That will reveal the leak. 2. A sudden shift in behavior. The betrayer will act strangely, either unusually kind or unusually distant, because their guilt will grow heavy. 3. A mistake in timing. One of the two outside connections will react to something in your life, before you ever said anything publicly. These 3 signs will align like pieces snapping into place. And when they do, you will no longer doubt what your heart has been feeling. My child, this next sentence is important. The person betraying you will soon expose themselves without you confronting them. You will not need to argue. You will not need to accuse. You will not need to ask questions. You will simply watch as truth reveals itself through their actions. Do you feel that shift in your chest? That is truth settling in. That is clarity rising. That is your spirit aligning with what has been hidden in the shadows. You have stepped into the second layer of revelation. My child, now that you have walked through the doorway of truth and stepped deeper into what has been hidden, I am going to take you into the heart of the betrayal itself. Everything you have sensed, everything you have questioned, everything that made your spirit restless, all of it is connected. Nothing happened randomly. Every strange moment, every uneasy feeling, every shift in someone's behavior was a piece of a larger picture I am now unfolding before you. Over time, actions often begin to speak more clearly than explanations, and it becomes harder to rely only on what is said out loud. Your awareness sharpens in quieter ways, not because everything suddenly becomes dramatic, but because you start noticing patterns you may have overlooked before. A message that feels slightly off, a reply that comes later than expected, or a conversation that doesn't carry its usual warmth can begin to stand out in a way it didn't before. Even silence can start to feel meaningful when it follows moments of emotional openness, and disagreements that seem to appear suddenly may feel more intense when trust is already feeling uncertain. None of these moments exist in isolation. They build perception gradually, shaping how you interpret connection and distance. At the same time, it is also important to recognize that human behavior is complex, and not every inconsistency carries hidden intent. People often struggle with communication when they are overwhelmed, uncertain, or emotionally conflicted, and that can lead to mixed signals that are not always rooted in clear purpose. Misunderstandings can grow easily when assumptions fill the gaps left by unspoken feelings. In such situations, what feels like distance may sometimes be stress, distraction, or difficulty in expressing emotion rather than something more deliberate. Still, your mind naturally tries to make sense of patterns, especially when something feels emotionally significant. That is where reflection becomes important. Not to assign absolute meaning too quickly, but to separate perception from certainty. When you step back and observe without rushing to conclusions, you gain clarity about what is consistent, what is uncertain, and what may simply be a moment of human imperfection. This kind of awareness does not require blame. It requires patience, honest communication, and the willingness to understand both your feelings and the other person's limitations before deciding what the full picture truly is. They compare themselves to you more than you realize. They pretend not to care, but they monitor everything about you, your choices, your progress, your blessings, your connections. They listen to your good news, but never celebrate. They hear of your struggles, but secretly feel satisfaction. This is the first affair, an emotional betrayal rooted in jealousy. But the second affair, this one is darker. This one is rooted in manipulation. My child, the second person involved in this hidden web is someone who studies human weaknesses. They know how to present themselves as harmless. They know how to play the role of a helper. They know how to disguise their interest with gentle phrases. But behind their eyes, their intentions are sharp. They look at people the way a hunter looks at prey, silently measuring where to strike. This second person was not chosen by accident. They approached your betrayer intentionally. They positioned themselves carefully. They created opportunities to influence. They gain trust slowly, step by step, until the person you trusted began seeking their validation more than yours. This second affair is not built on emotions. It is built on control. They want access to you without facing you directly. They want to shape your world without entering your home. They want to pull strings quietly, unseen, unnoticed, and they do it through the one close to you. Now, my child, let me show you something important, something that ties the entire betrayal together. There was a moment not long ago when you felt attacked spiritually. You felt heaviness. Your dreams became strange. Your thoughts felt cloudy. You didn't know why, but everything felt disrupted. That wasn't random. That wasn't just stress. That wasn't just life. That was the moment the second person used information your betrayer gave them to influence something around you. Your betrayer didn't realize it, but by sharing your vulnerabilities, they handed a weapon to someone who wanted access to your spirit. That is why your energy dropped suddenly. That is why you felt disconnected. That is why your enthusiasm vanished for a few days. Your soul felt the impact of someone pulling spiritual strings in the background. But hear this clearly. What was meant to weaken you awakened you, because the shift that hurt you also opened your spiritual eyes. You began sensing things differently. You became more aware. You stopped ignoring the signs. You started paying attention to. Sometimes when uncertainty enters a relationship, the mind begins to overinterpret everything it sees, as if every small detail suddenly carries a hidden meaning, a change in tone, a delayed reply, a shift in energy that once felt familiar can start to feel amplified, almost like the atmosphere itself has become heavier. In that state, it is easy to begin imagining patterns that feel connected, even when there is no clear evidence tying them together. The brain is built to search for explanations, especially when something emotionally important feels unstable, and in doing so it can turn silence into suspicion and coincidence into meaning. What often follows is a growing sense that something unseen must be happening beneath the surface, as if there is a truth just out of reach, waiting to be uncovered. But this experience, as real as it feels internally, is often more about emotional alertness than actual events. When trust feels unsettled, perception becomes sharper, but not always more accurate. You start noticing everything, yet interpreting it through a lens shaped by worry rather than clarity. Even neutral behavior can begin to feel loaded, and ordinary human inconsistency can appear intentional. This is where misunderstanding quietly takes root, not because people are necessarily hiding something, but because fear begins to fill the gaps where information is missing. In moments like these, the sense that something is, quote, about to be revealed, or, quote, becoming obvious, is often the mind trying to resolve discomfort by creating a narrative that feels complete, even if it is not fully grounded in reality. The emotional intensity of that narrative can make it feel undeniably true, but intensity alone is not the same as accuracy. What is actually happening is a collision between limited information and heightened emotional sensitivity, and that combination can make even simple situations feel layered and suspicious. Recognizing this does not dismiss your feelings. It simply helps separate what is observed from what is being assumed, so that understanding can remain anchored in reality rather than shaped by fear-driven interpretation. But what they don't know is that you are being placed under divine protection and divine awareness right now. Every hidden thing is being pulled out of darkness. Every masked intention is losing its power. Every secret is trembling because it cannot survive the light. My child, I am preparing you for the moment of exposure. Let me tell you how the exposure will begin. It won't start with a confrontation. It won't start with an argument. It won't start with anger. It will begin quietly, just like the betrayal began quietly. A slip of the tongue, a message someone receives too quickly, a reaction someone gives too soon, a piece of information someone repeats without knowing you haven't shared it yet, a sudden tension in the air when certain names come up, a strange over-explanation for something simple, a defensive answer to a question you didn't even finish asking. These small cracks will open wide. They will create a path, and through that path, every hidden truth will rise to the surface. My child, do not fear what is coming. It is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to free you. Because when this betrayal collapses under its own weight, something powerful will happen. You will step into clarity. You will step into strength. You will step into authority. You will step into a new season where deception cannot follow you. You are closer to the breakthrough than you realize. But before we enter breakthrough, we must finish revelation. My child, now that we have traveled through every layer of what has been hidden, now that you have seen the roots of the betrayal, the causes, the intentions, and the consequences, it is time for the final revelation, the moment where everything begins to shift in your favor. You have walked through darkness, not to stay in it, but to recognize it. You have listened with an open heart, not to be wounded, but to be awakened. Now I will show you what happens next, how the truth collapses, how the masks fall, and how your life transforms because of this entire experience. You see, betrayal is a seed that never stays small. It grows branches, it grows roots, it grows thorns, but it eventually grows so big it becomes impossible to hide. The betrayer you trusted has been carrying too many lies inside their spirit. Their mind is exhausted, their emotions are cracking, their behavior is becoming inconsistent because they cannot hold the weight any longer. And the two individuals they are connected to, the ones who fed on your private moments, they have become overconfident. They believe their secrecy is secure. They believe their influence will go unnoticed. They believe the person close to you will continue giving them access. But what they don't know is that heaven has already stepped in. There are moments in life when your awareness begins to shift, not suddenly, but gradually, like a fog lifting from a familiar landscape. What once felt confusing starts to feel more structured, not because everything around you changes, but because your perspective does. You begin to notice more clearly how silence, distance, and uncertainty affect your perception, and how easily the mind can fill gaps when it is searching for meaning. In that process, emotional sensitivity becomes sharper. You may feel more aware of tone, timing, and subtle changes in how people communicate. But not everything that feels significant is necessarily a signal of hidden intent. Often, it is simply life unfolding in ordinary, imperfect ways. People choosing their words carefully, moments of hesitation, or misunderstandings that resolve only with time and clarity. As reflection deepens, there is also an inner shift. Instead of trying to decode every interaction, you begin to focus more on what is stable and grounded, what is consistently shown, what is clearly communicated, and what can be understood without assumption. That change brings a different kind of strength, not the urgency to uncover hidden meanings, but the ability to remain steady even when things are not fully known. And in that steadiness, something important happens. The emotional weight that once came from uncertainty begins to loosen. You realize that peace does not come from having every answer immediately, but from not needing to force answers where they are not yet fully formed. Clarity, when it arrives, tends to be simple rather than dramatic. It is not a sudden collapse of hidden truths, but a quiet alignment of understanding over time. From that place, growth becomes less about exposure and more about transformation, learning how to stay grounded in what is real, how to release what is assumed, and how to move forward without letting uncertainty shape your entire inner world.